Hello there, you Awakening Wonders. Thanks for joining me today for Stay Free with Russell Brand. Do you want to be involved in a global holy war? Let me know in the comments and the chat. All wars, in a way, are holy. Tucker Carlson spoke a lot about spiritual warfare, sharing intimately his extraordinary experiences of demonic possession. Let me know in the comments and chat if you saw that. Well, how do you imagine a spiritual perspective helps us to assess and understand escalating Armageddon? Who benefits from Joe Biden using long-range missiles inside of Russia? Let me know in the comments and chat. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'll be with you for the first 15 minutes. Then we'll be streaming exclusively in that sweet stream of freedom that I call Rumble. And if you're not an Awakened Wonder yet, like Sensitive Hearts 25 or Negligent Banana, become one. And then you'll be able to join me for the exclusive conversations that I have on Break Bread. And it's a special one this week. Christian singer, star sensation, and pastor Brandon Lake. You can join me for that live if you are an Awakened Wonder already. Now, we're going to be talking about Project Veritas's latest sting and revelations that James O'Keefe has brought to us. We're going to be talking a lot about Mike Benz's appearance on Joe Rogan and the extraordinary revelation that Joe Biden should never have run for president, really, should he? When you look at his sort of family complications, Keir Starmer would use the phrase, the shape of my family. Whoa, we're getting controversial now. What is the shape of Keir Starmer's family? Is it the shape of somebody else's body? We can't go too deep there. We'll get injuncted, baby. It's a prison planet, and the penitentiary on the UK islands is getting into Category A status. Only Ray Liotta would attempt to escape from such a space, and if you get that reference, you must be around my age. Let's start off by having a quick look at NBC's Chuck Todd blasting the Bidens over their decision to allow Joe Biden to run for president. Let's have a quick look at that.
I follow the Hunter Biden trial very closely. I read every transcript, all the testimony, because that's what all that was made public. And there is, you want to get angry, just as somebody in just all these mixed emotions. You read the Hallie Biden transcript, and that's Bo's widow.
Yes.
And essentially he turned her into a crack addict. And this was all happening in 2017, 2018. And Joe Biden were so concerned about their family that they decided to run for president.
Yep.
So when you talk about the word selfish, it's almost like the word doesn't, their decision to run for president put the entire Democratic Party and the United States of America in the position that it's in now.
Whoa, and maybe even the entire world is in trouble because of that crazy little decision. Surely, like me, you've seen the Biden crime family signs adorning your neighborhood. Surely, like me, you're beginning to wonder if the accusations that are often leveled at Trump that he only became president in order to protect himself from future felony charges and prosecutions, that could equally apply to the Biden family if only you were to use a more objective lens. Now, Mike Benz, who's a great friend of this show, had a wonderful appearance on Joe Rogan. Let me know if you saw that in the comments and chat. And while we're still on YouTube, I want to take the opportunity to look at why 2014 was such an important year. Let's think of a few things about 2014. It's the year of the coup in Ukraine. It's the year that Hunter Biden's pardon goes back to. So what exactly did go on in 2014, and why is America rightfully outraged about it?
When did the government realize that they had to get actively involved in censorship, and what steps did they initially take to get involved in this?
It started in 2014 with the Ukraine fiasco, the coup and then the counter coup. The coup was great for internet free speech. I mean, you really do need to start the story of internet censorship with the story of internet freedom. Because promotion of censorship is sort of the flip side of promotion of free speech. And we've had this free speech government diplomatic role for 80 years now. When World War II ended, we embarked, we had the international rules-based order that was created in 1948. We had the UN, we had NATO, we had the IMF, the World Bank. We had this big global system now. There was a prohibition in 1948 under the UN Declaration of Human Rights that you can't acquire territory by military force anymore and have it be respected by international law. So everything had to move to soft power influence. And so the U.S. government took a very active role beginning in 1948 to promote free speech around the world. And this was done through all these, initially CIA proprietaries like Voice of America and Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty. And then the whole Wisner's, Wurlitzer, State Department CIA apparatus, all the early partnerships with the media and the war machine around propaganda for World War II continued through the Cold War. And then that hit the gas with promotion of free speech on the internet when the internet was privatized. It was initially a military project, so it was a government operation from Jump Street. And then in 1991, the World Wide Web came out, civilian use. And right away, the State Department, the military, our intelligence sphere was promoting free speech so that we could have a basically government pressure on foreign countries to open up their internet, to allow basically groups that the U.S. government was supporting to be able to combat state control over media in those other countries. So we already had this sort of deep interplay between government, tech companies, universities, NGOs that dates back 80 years. If you look at the evolution of NGOs like Freedom House or the Atlantic Council or Wilson Center and promoting these free speech things. So, but what happened was in 2014, we had about 25 years of successful free speech diplomacy. And then there was we tried to overthrow the government of Ukraine. We successfully did. And I'm not even arguing whether that's a good or a bad thing. But the fact is the U.S. did effectively January 6th, the Yanukovych government out of power in 2014. I mean, we literally had our Assistant Secretary of State for Europe and Eurasian Affairs, Victoria Nuland, handing out cookies and water bottles to violent street protesters as they surrounded the Parliament building and ran the democratically elected government out of office.
How's the protest going? Do you want some cookies? Do you want some water bottles? I like how Mike Benz calls it January 6th. Like that can become a verb now. One thing you get from listening to him is that Ukraine and Russia and their conflict, whatever it may be, it is not a simple humanitarian intervention from NATO against a criminal regime in Russia. It clearly is a conflict that on one hand has the interests of NATO countries and interests that are masked behind veil after veil of first bureaucracy and then nation. We're looking at repurposed imperialism and colonialism. We've brought you stories before about how Ukraine is ultimately being used to pilot digital post-democratic dystopias through centralized currencies and citizen management, banning trade unions and any movements that might empower the people of that population.
But then what happened is the eastern side of the state completely broke away. So we don't respect this new U.S.-installed government. Crimea voted in a referendum to join the Russian Federation. And that kicked off, that sort of set in motion the events that would end the concept of free speech diplomacy as like a U.S. government unfettered good. Because what they argued is we pumped $5 billion worth of U.S. government money into media institutions in Ukraine. That's the figure that's cited by Victoria Nuland in December 2013, right before the coup. $5 billion setting up independent media companies, basically sponsoring Mockingbird style our media assets in the region. And they still didn't penetrate eastern Ukraine. Eastern Ukraine was primarily ethnic Russian, didn't penetrate Crimea. So they said, we need something to stop them from being able to combat our media influence. And they initially called this the Gerasimov Doctrine, named after Valery Gerasimov, who was this Russian general. They took a quote from him saying, the new nature of war is no longer about military to military conflict. All we need to do is take over the media in these NATO countries. And that's primarily social media. Get one of our pawns elected as the president, and that president will control the military. So it's much cheaper and more efficient to win a military war by simply winning civilian elections. So that was called the Gerasimov Doctrine. That's what set up the early censorship infrastructure in 2014. 3 years later, the guy who coined that, Mark Galeotti, would write a sort of mea culpa saying, oops, I'm sorry. Gerasimov was actually citing what the U.S. does. But by that point, they'd already renamed it hybrid warfare. NATO formally declared its tanks to tweets doctrine, saying that the new role of NATO is no longer just about tanks. It's about controlling tweets. And then Brexit happened in June 2016. In July 2016, the very next month in Warsaw, NATO added hybrid warfare to its formal charter, basically authorizing the military, the diplomatic sphere, and the intelligence world to take control over social media. And then 5 months later, Trump won the election, being called a Russian asset. So all that infrastructure was redirected home to the U.S.
Jesus.
In old media, you have a only skin-deep view of politics. The New York Times will attack Rumble and say that Rumble are pushing Russian interests or generating hysteria in order to sell products. With someone like Mike Benz appearing on Joe Rogan, you get a truly subcutaneous perspective of the sinew, fascia, muscularity, and skeletal structures of real power. Instead of looking at the Ukraine-Russia conflict and going, what? Putin? He's a bad guy. He invaded into Ukraine and the Ukrainian people have got to be protected. All of a sudden, you're looking at Operation Mockingbird. You're looking at investment. You're looking at George Soros. You're looking at beneficiaries in big tech investing in advance into Ukraine. You're looking at CIA bases in Ukraine. You're looking at the nexus of power exposed. This is why they want to control your free speech, not in order to protect you, but in order to protect them. Once you have information, you will become a dissident. That's what happened in the recent American election. They could no longer, try as they might, control the American public through late-night talk show hosts deriding Trump and ridiculing RFK. They could no longer, through MSNBC, tell you what to be afraid of. Joy Reid can go into an apoplex of rage all she likes, but now people are listening to Mike Benz on Joe Rogan, and when people have access to that caliber of information, they become less malleable. Now, you know me, I'm not suggesting that the solution to the world's problems are nationalist, nativist, populist movements across the world. But what those movements are is a disruption of the globalist agenda that's supported by permanent political figures in deep state agencies. And that is the disruption they fear most. And like Keir Starmer nervously counting his way down to a Christmas erection, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yippee. In fact, I've got to see that again. Oh, no, I'll watch it again in a minute. I love that moment when he did. Have you seen Keir Starmer do the countdown? Blows my mind. What we now have access to is information that exposes their true agenda. Why don't any of these politicians like Keir Starmer and Trudeau make sense? Is because they are merely agents and avatars of a far deeper power. And it may go beyond matters of economics and dominion. Indeed, many people now believe that it's nothing less than true evil itself. And in order to disrupt that evil, we're going to have to make new alliances. We're going to have to make new compromises. We're going to have to look in ourselves more deeply than ever before. I am going to look at Keir Starmer. I've got to see him do that Christmas countdown just one more time.
Could you please join me when I say 5?
5, the number 5, 5 fruity flavours of 5 alive. Jackson 5, the 5 fingers on my hand that I use to caress my wife's body, and no one else's, I'll tell you that.
4.
Number of the Beatles. 4, a number that's unlucky for the Chinese. 4, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that may be upon us if we do not pull back from this needless and unnecessary agitation of Putin and Russia and nuclear superpower.
3.
The first word in the film, Free Willy. Free Willy, Free Willy. My Willy is being kept under good control, but we got to free actual Willy.
2.
To govern or not to govern, that is the question. Whether it's nobler in the mind to become an authoritarian under the auspices of compassion, or whether one ought actually have some virtue and principles that one is merely a conduit of because of a connection to a deep, ulterior, universal force that we might know as God. And if there is a unitive principle, we all know the next number would be
1. Yay! It worked.
Wish it could be Christmas every day. Jingle bells, Batman smells, Robin laid an egg.
Nervous moment there, but it's all good.
Nervous moment, but then we were back to our typical joy. Welcome to Christmas at the Starmer household. Would you like to pull a cracker? Yippee! Would you like some Christmas pudding? Yay! Would you like some turkey? Woo! Woo! Can I see your hands in the air like your mother effing well just don't care? Christmas. Jesus has returned. Well, not returned, he's being born, he's become flesh. The divine unmanifest principle has collapsed into a material principle. The unknowable superstate of potentialities has become form, showing us that we can access the divine through our own consciousness. Merry Christmas, one and all. If you're watching us on YouTube, we're going to leave you now. We're out of here. We got to be able to stream freely because we're going to be talking about the Biden crime family. We're going to be talking about vaccines and what they mean to me. We're going to be talking about, well, we're going to be talking about how every single Ukrainian democratic institution has been captured. We're going to be relying on the brilliance of Mike Benz. All of this and more, just one click away if you want to come with us and bathe in the living waters of free speech instead of the stinking, stagnant pond of YouTube over there. What is that smell? It's the smell of censorship, baby. Join us. Free yourself. Enjoy liberty. Click the link.